I'm going to have to hit record. I just, believe you me, I made the best video that has ever been produced in the history of mankind, and I forgot to hit record. So it's been lost. It echoes throughout time. I was doxing somebody. Eric the Bow Guy. That's your name in the contacts, Eric. Referring to Andy's workshop bow. It was entitled, I think, Native American Bow. Beautiful yew, probably not Pacific yew, because Andy, I believe, is in Europe, so it's probably, Italian yew or something like that. Sinew back, beautiful bow, recurved, little native style bow, gorgeous bow. And the comment that I received in text that happened not too long ago was like he would have to charge $3,000 for that bow. And when talking about a relative, I'm not going to dox you too much. There are levels of doxedness. Somebody of his acquaintance and or relative that makes stone points, and it's true. You're not making the hourly wage you would be trimming trees or stump grinding, but there's a big difference. A stump grind, it's like, what do? I'm gonna get in the pickup truck. Here, I'm gonna drive by a yard. See that where there isn't a stump? I did that. You're looking at nothing. And if you do a good job trimming trees, you really don't know that the trees were trimmed because they heal up fast and hide the scars of your saw. Trim it right outside the branch collar. Don't leave a stump cut. But bows, points, we are creating something, that could last. Along with the knowledge and enjoyment of others, handling these things, using them. So it's well worth it. It's well worth it. But I'm sitting down here. Yeah, sitting. Let's go through a few things here. I've worked it down to 1 growth ring. And I did a video on it, but it was kind of a dumb video, and I made some misstatements and stuff like that. I don't know. It's still, I could probably bring it up. But working down to a growth ring, I'll just say I use a drop point knife and a draw knife on my shaving bench. I've got a shaving bench. It uses Jorgensen, the clamps, the wooden clamps with the 2 screws on them. I like that because I don't have to sit on my bench and push down with my feet. I can stand off and work in all different ways. But when I'm working, I'm going to set this here up. It might bump a little bit. I prefer pushing. Doing it with my draw knife. I hog off most of it, so I'm not going through like 50 layers because I don't want to have like the finished right here and then have this steep mountain of stuff. I work it down quite a bit. Even went so far as to draw knife the edges so I could see the growth rings, because this was an odd wood. It's darker on one end and then it changes color along the surface of this growth ring. And it almost looks, here I can see it's just single growth ring. But it kind of looks in the right light like, oh, I just jumped a growth ring. But I can just double check. It's just changing color, This did a pretty good job. But I like pushing mostly, and then using my drop point knife to peel off the rest of that and build up a shelf so then I have something to bite into my draw knife. Like making a stone point. You create a shelf, for whack. Same deal. Little flip with the drop point knife. And then when it gets to it, then near the end and I can't clamp that, then I have to rotate it and then draw a knife like normal human beings. But yeah, this worked out well. I'm analyzing this. It's almost 90 degrees on the surface, and when you are draw knifing the edge, you run into the issue sometimes of pulling these things up. So I am, before I proceed in working it down to the width, well, a constant width. I'm not going to mark out the bonehead, the tapered tips, whatever. I'm just going to get it down to 1 1/8 inches the whole way, right? But before I do that, I am going to mark it to 3/4 inch. I can do that. I know where the back is, so it's not going to be deeper than 3/4 inch anywhere along there. Scribe it and then knock it off. So I now have these edges, and only 3/4 inch deep. Could split it, could draw knife it down to it, I could say I would do it differently if I could get another bow out of this bottom layer, but I can't really because of weirdnesses, like see how narrow that is. So I might just mark it to 3/4 of an inch on both sides. Take my 10 saw. This is the best handsaw I have for Osage. It's aggressive, it's sharp, and it cuts like a monster. But clamp it down. I've got the lines on both sides. Every so often saw down to my lines. I would have more control chipping. Then I could just take, whatever, knock these chunks off and use them to fire hardened bows. Seems like a waste. This is almost borderline. I could turn this into 2 bows. Bow here, but again, if I was to split it, I risk what happens if I get to a 1/2 inch thick in the handle. See, now I just lost everything. So I'm probably just gonna saw it to my lines and just knock them out. Use a hammer. Boink, 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 boink. The claw portion of a hammer. Sometimes I use. Yeah. It's good. What is it? I could have been 1.5 inches there, but sides are good, so that's no biggie. About 1 3/4 there. So I've got enough for bows. And keep in mind, a lot of these horse bows in Osage were narrow. Some of them were less than 1 inch wide. Getting down like 3/4 of an inch wide. Pretty narrow thing. Yesterday, I Sinew backed 2 bows. I've got Newell's bow. It's still a mummy. And I've got this hickory, 48 inch. This one is, I forget, 51 inches maybe. Well, it's raining. Red belly, like that. I like this. I'm thinking of, before I talk about this one, thinking of when I was a kid, reading Larry D. Olson's Survival Guide. Was that the name of it? And there was a bow section in there. Trapped about. Living off the grid in the woods, hunting with a bow and stuff like that. Boy, if I had this thing when I was a kid, I would have been just in heaven, man. This is going to be a sweet little bow, and it's going to be on the stiffer side. You can do that with hickory. Now I'm going to segue. I had a request. Gabriel wondered if I had hickory blank. This was made from exactly one of these things. So yeah, I have a hickory blank, 48 inch on hand. This is super stiff. Pardon me, sawdust. But it has to be rounded. I did this one to 2.5 inch diameter. You just take something that's 2.5 inch diameter, and I use a thin piece of wood. You could use whatever, trace out the little circle. And then you have a guide, so you're going to clamp this thing down, and this works really nice with a scraper with a sharp knife. You put that rounded thing right here. I see daylight on it, see a scrape, sand, whatever, orbital disc sand, or whatever. Just so you don't see light when you're looking under it on both sides. And when you do it to a 2.5 inch diameter, I took it from a 2.5 inch diameter tree. All right, that's what it mimics. So it's very rounded, very sharp on the edges. You can see how sharp that is on the edges. You're getting in the ballpark. So yeah, I have that blank. And we've got some time, Gabriel, to talk about it, because your red oak, fire hardened, sinew back horsebow, it's going to take a while to cure. I'm not talking like years, but probably a month before it leaves the house. And I'm going to bake it on sunny days now that it's dry, in my greenhouse. Close the top vents, close the door, let it sit in the greenhouse, and just bake the crap out of it. Newell's bow here. I could take the sinew. I did both of these in one day. They don't take that long. Did them a little different. On Newell's bow, I had my baggie full of all these sinew fibers, right? I forget how many. I did a total of 12 tendons, but I didn't have all of them soaking in my baggie of weak hide glue. weak hide glue so it doesn't gel, you know, until it gets about 60 degrees, more or less. Really, really size the backs, probably more than I would size them with glue than if I was to dip it in a hot glue pot over a double boiler, you know, standard. You've got the bundles, dip it, put them on. Wanted to make sure I had enough sizing because that's, you know, a strong part of the glue here because I'm using a weaker hide glue to soak the fibers. But again, back to it. One or two fibers at a time, starting at the tips on Newell's bow. You're not bound to that style, one or two fibers, when you're using. I'm picking out fibers, groups of fibers, whatever, from my 1 gallon Ziploc bag with all these things that have been soaking for hours and hours. So they're soft, no hard ends, they stick to everything really nicely. Sometimes when you dip them, count to 20, you'll still have hard ends. It takes a while, and with the hard ends, they don't want to stick underneath the tips very well. But you let them soak for a long time in that baggie, but not too long because they will get stinky after a while. And probably the water, if they're soaking in water for a week, they'll probably be weaker, you know, they kind of break down a little bit in the fluid medium of H2O. I did this one like a standard bow, right? It's sitting on my jig, which it's in the house, yeah. It's like an I-beam with feet. And I've got these blocks that I can slide them depending on the length of the bow, right? And they're cut so they've got these little edges so the bow can't fall out, but they're wide enough to work the edges. Stick it on there. Sitting on the ground in the kitchen on this cardboard, I unfold it. Put my Tupperware with the Ziploc bag full of tendons, a Sinew. Fold it down so, boom, they're right there. It's like they're in a dish. And how I work this one, very conventional. I'd pull out a bundle, adjusting the size of the bundle, but they would be bundles comparable to having them spread on my workbench. Grabbing one, dipping it, putting it on. Did a bundle. Think of 3 lanes on this road. Center, one on either side, right? I did the center lane first, starting dead center in the handle section, just right down the center. Overlapped it, completed that lane. Then, worked on, let's say this one, because this one's close. Whoa, reflexes of a cat. This one's closest. Started a little away from center because I not only want to overlap in each lane, I want to overlap between both lanes. If I started here in the center lane, I'm going to start here in the left lane, the passing lane, as it were. Just like normal, pulling out bundles. If I needed to make a bigger bundle, I'd grab another fiber. If I had too big of a bundle, I'd pull off a few fibers and lay it on the edge of the plastic baggie. It's simple. And then I mummy wrapped it. And again, you can see that's the kind of gauze that, what would you call that? I don't know. More woven than the stuff you get at Dollar General now that looks like fleece. That fleecy stuff isn't as strong as old time stuff. Let it cure, let it gel, let it dry a little bit so it's not sticky. And they're kind of set. They're kind of glued down. They're stuck on there. One reason you don't want the gauze to stick, it's not going to stick that much because gauze is designed not to stick to wounds. You know, dry blood and all that stuff, kind of like hide glue. And secondly, you don't want the stuff to shift. So you have to work at even pressure, even not super Grella pressure. You do that the second round after it's dried down and it's not going to shift. Even pressure all the way around. This one, you can see it still has that. I added more to the center handle to guard the reflex in it. And because it's an inside corner, inside bend, it can still pull up a little bit. So I'm going to wrap it tight. I could actually at this point I can wrap the tips. Tip, 2 tips. And I could even wrap where my fingers are here, just where that constriction is, because that's an inside corner too. And that way I wouldn't need to mummy wrap it anymore. I could just let it sit and admire it as it dries. Now Gabriel's, I went back and I dyed the sinew to make it nice even black. But it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I kind of like this. Now, if I was to dye it black, just start black. Black! Black is the color of my soul. Then I could see if I'm going to decorate it, as in the case of Gabriel's bow with white spots, I can do all sorts of fancy stuff with white because I use eggshell. I don't use, when I paint, as in the case of the Raven bow, which I need to get it in gear. It's a bow now. It's balanced. It's heavy. It needs to be lightened a little bit. Just be sure, because I've had paddle bows, that crumple a little bit. Just because they're so heavy, there's a limit to them. You'll get chrysals and stuff like that if they're too heavy. There's limits. 65 pounds, a red oak paddle bow. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It depends. That's right on the cusp. It depends on how sturdy that red oak was, how dense, because there isn't just one red oak. Southern red oak and northern red oak have different densities. Probably because northern red oak, Quercus rubra, there's probably different species names for a southern red oak and a northern red oak varieties. It's not like Animalia. It's a feline. It's a cat. It's a Felis domesticus. Stops at 2. But plants can go beyond varieties, subvarieties. It's a huge taxonomic mess. Complex. But yeah, red oak isn't, even northern red oak, it depends. Some can be denser than others. Some could stand 65 pounds. Others, keep it at 55 and be safe. Complex world of wood. You know what the hardest wood in North America is? And I'm not trying to be a 14-year-old kid here. I'm not trying to be off color. I mean, mesquite apparently has the hardest jonca hardness. It's harder than black locust. It's harder than Osage. It's also hard to find a stave that's straight enough to make a bow. Oh yeah? Good question. The answer is yeah. If there's anybody out there that can get me like a straight piece of mesquite over 46 inches long between 46 and 51, let me know. Let me know. That I would be willing to trade a bow for. It is about the money. Show me the money. So I'm not big on trading. There's very few people I would trade with. But one of those persons would be a person that has access to a stave quality piece of mesquite. Yes, sir, Reed Bob. Yes, sir. I think I've rambled long enough. Yeah, covered it. Have a good one. Thank you for watching.